What if one simple act of kindness could change your life forever? Tonight, I'm about to tell you the story of a waitress, a lonely boy, and a billionaire who saw something in her that no one else did. Stick around to find out how this unexpected encounter led to a life-changing opportunity. Trust me, you won't believe what happened next. And if you want more incredible stories like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join the journey. It was a cold, rainy evening, the kind that made everyone want to stay inside, sip hot drinks, and enjoy the comfort of a warm home. But inside the small diner, a different kind of story was unfolding. The open sign flickered, casting its glow through the windows, while raindrops hammered against the glass. The diner was quiet, with only a few customers scattered around. The smell of fresh coffee and sizzling food filled the air, blending with the muffled sound of thunder outside. The low hum of conversation and the clinking of silverware on plates created a comforting background. But amidst it all, there was an unfamiliar stillness, a sense of unease hanging in the air. The usual bustle was absent. Tonight it was as if the diner was waiting for something to happen, something unexpected. And that something was the young boy sitting alone at a booth, looking as out of place as a raindrop on a perfectly clear day. His clothes were soaked, and he looked to be no older than 10. His oversized suit clung to him like a reminder of a world he didn't seem to belong to. His hair, drenched from the rain, hung limp around his face. His shoes, old and worn, barely clung to his feet, evidence of the long walk he had likely endured in the downpour. He didn't look like the kind of boy you'd see out in a storm, at least not without a parent or an adult watching over him. His eyes were downcast, his hands folded tightly in his lap as he stared at the table, lost in his own thoughts. His shoulders were hunched, as if he was trying to make himself smaller, to disappear. His expression was a mixture of exhaustion and sadness, as though the weight of the world had been placed on him without warning, and he wasn't sure how to bear it. His gaze flickered up for a moment, catching the light from the window. But when his eyes met the world outside, he quickly looked away, as if the raindrops on the glass somehow mirrored the tears he was desperately trying to hold back. He was alone in more ways than one, and though his physical presence filled the booth, his silence made him seem invisible. Across the room, Clara, the waitress, was busy attending to the small group of regulars who had come in to escape the rain. She was used to the late-night rush, the chatter, the clinking of coffee cups and plates. But tonight was different. There was something about the atmosphere, something that made her pause every now and then, her eyes darting over to the boy in the corner. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, something she couldn't quite put her finger on. Her hands moved almost mechanically as she served coffee, refilled glasses of water, and wiped down the counter. But her thoughts kept drifting back to the boy. He didn't belong here, at least not in the way the others did. The customers at the booths were familiar faces, regulars who came in for their late-night meals or to seek shelter from the storm. But this boy, this lost soul sitting alone, was a mystery. She noticed how he never asked for anything, not even a menu, as if he didn't even know how to ask. His gaze never met anyone else's. He seemed to retreat further into himself the longer he sat there. She had seen her fair share of lonely people come through the diner, people who came for the warmth of the food or the quiet of the place. But the boy seemed different. There was a heaviness about him, something more than just the weight of the rain on his shoulders. It was as if he was carrying an invisible burden, one that was too heavy for a boy of his age to bear. Clara felt a pang of sympathy in her chest as she watched him. She wanted to reach out, to ask him if he was okay, but she didn't know how. What could she say to him? He was a child, yet he had the air of someone far older, as though the innocence of childhood had been taken from him too soon. The thoughts swirled in Clara's mind as she went through the motions, but she couldn't focus on anything else. She saw him there, his small frame hunched over, his hands trembling slightly as they gripped the edge of the table, and in that moment, something inside her clicked. She had to do something. She couldn't just let him sit there alone without offering some form of comfort. She didn't have much to give, but what she had was warmth, and she knew she could offer that. Without another thought, Clara made her way over to the boy's booth. Her footsteps were light, almost hesitant as she approached him. But the closer she got, the more she realized that this was the right thing to do. "Hey there," she said softly, her voice a comforting presence in the otherwise quiet diner. The boy's eyes flickered up for a moment, and for a brief second, Clara saw the vulnerability in his eyes. He didn't speak, but his gaze seemed to plead for something: comfort, understanding, or perhaps just the simple acknowledgement of his presence. "Would you like something to eat?" Clara asked gently, her tone laced with kindness. The boy hesitated, his eyes darting to the empty plate in front of him, then back to her. There was a long pause before he nodded faintly, almost as if he were embarrassed to accept her offer. Clara gave him a warm smile. "I'll bring you something warm," she said, not giving him a chance to decline. She turned and walked to the kitchen, her mind racing. What did he need? What could she offer him that would make him feel a little less alone? She decided on the simplest thing: a plate of meatloaf with mashed potatoes and gravy. It was the kind of meal that made you feel comforted, the kind of food you'd want on a rainy night. Clara brought it over to his table, setting the steaming plate in front of him. She looked at him for a moment, watching as he slowly lifted his fork, then placed it back down, his hands trembling slightly. "Here you go," Clara said softly. "I hope it helps." The boy didn't say anything at first. His eyes lingered on the food, then back up to her. For a moment there was nothing but silence between them, but then, in a quiet voice, the boy whispered, "Thank you." It was barely audible, but Clara heard it, and in that moment something inside her stirred. She had done something simple, something small, but it had made a difference. She smiled at him and walked away, knowing that for just a little while, she had given him the comfort he needed. As Clara returned to her duties, she couldn't help but glance over at the boy every now and then. She saw him slowly eating the meal, his face softening, the tension in his shoulders easing with every fight. The storm outside seemed to match his emotions. Clara had seen many people come and go. There was some with quick smiles, others with hurried orders that hadn't been there before. But there was something about this boy that Clara watched with her. She realized that others didn't. It's the smallest acts of kindness that can make the biggest difference. His small frame, in her little corner of the warmth of the diner, she had offered him not just food, but a moment of comfort tightly around, and that was enough to make her heart feel just a little bit lighter, like it was the only thing keeping him grounded in a world that seemed too big for him. His gaze was fixed on the table in front of him, his body language tense and withdrawn. Clara watched from the counter, her heart tugging at the sight. The boy wasn't asking for anything, no meal, no attention, but the desperation in his eyes was clear. It wasn't the kind of hunger that could be satisfied with just food. It was something deeper, something Clara couldn't quite understand but felt deeply nonetheless. She knew she couldn't just stand there, pretending he wasn't in the corner of the diner, quietly suffering. She had seen enough to know that sometimes the smallest gestures could make a world of difference, and this boy, whoever he was, needed something that went beyond a glass of water. Gathering her courage, Clara wiped her hands on her apron and walked over to his table, her voice soft and welcoming. "Hey there," she said, her smile gentle as she approached him. The boy looked up at her suddenly, as if startled that someone had noticed him. His eyes were wide, and for a moment it seemed like he didn't know how to respond. His lips parted as if he wanted to say something, but no words came out. Clara could see that he was embarrassed, unsure how to accept kindness from a stranger. She didn't want to make him feel uncomfortable, so she quickly added, "Would you like something to eat?" The boy just stared at her for a long moment, his face a mixture of confusion and hesitation. He didn't ask for food, didn't even seem to know that he needed it, but Clara could feel it, that quiet ache inside him. There was something unspoken in the air, a silent plea for help that she couldn't ignore. Clara's heart went out to him, and without giving him the chance to turn her down, she added, "I'll bring you something warm." She said it more for herself than for him, her words not just a promise to the boy, but a reaffirmation of her own compassion. It was an instinct, a need to do something for this boy who had come into her diner, lost and alone on such a cold night. As she turned and made her way back to the kitchen, Clara couldn't help but think about the boy's situation. He was dressed, well enough. His clothes weren't tattered or torn, but they seemed out of place for someone his age. His suit was too big for him, making him look smaller, more fragile, as if he didn't belong here, in this diner, on this rainy night. She couldn't shake the feeling that he didn't come from a place of comfort or safety. There was something unbeknownst to Clara. There was someone else in the diner who had been watching this exchange closely. A man who had witnessed many things, but was now captivated by a simple act of kindness. In the corner booth, sitting quietly, with a cup of coffee, was a man. He was impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, his posture perfect, his demeanor calm and composed. His name was Jared Westbrook, and he was one of the wealthiest men in the city, a name that commanded respect. In boardrooms and luxury establishments alike, he was no stranger to the hustle of the world, and his sharp eyes had seen countless things in his life. But tonight, he was focused entirely on one thing: the young waitress named Clara and the way she had chosen to care for the lonely boy in the corner. Jared was used to seeing people in the diner. It was his place of quiet retreat. But there was something different about Clara, something that stood out in a way he couldn't ignore. She wasn't just a waitress moving from table to table, taking orders and handing out checks. No, Clara was something more. She had a presence about her, a warmth that seemed to radiate beyond her duties. Jared had been observing her for weeks, fascinated by the way she interacted with the customers. He noticed how she never rushed anyone, how she took the time to listen, to make eye contact, and to offer a kind word, no matter how busy she was. She wasn't just serving food. She was serving something deeper. She was building connections, even in the most fleeting of interactions. People didn't just come to the diner for the food. They came for the comfort of her presence. The kindness, that seemed to follow her every move. But tonight something was different. Jared watched as Clara approached the young boy, a child who was clearly out of place in this quiet diner. He saw the hesitation in her step, the way her gaze softened when she looked at him, as though she could sense the weight of his unspoken troubles. Jared watched as she knelt beside him, her voice gentle and warm as she offered him a meal. The boy hadn't asked for anything. He hadn't even looked at her, yet Clara reached out, offering what she could: food, comfort, kindness. It wasn't just an act of service. It was a moment of human connection, a moment that transcended the usual transactional nature of diner interactions. Jared's gaze never wavered as Clara went to the kitchen to bring the boy his meal. He saw the boy's hesitant fingers curl around the fork, his body still tense, unsure of what to do with this unexpected kindness. But then Jared saw something change. He saw the boy's shoulders relax, just a little, the tension lifting as he began to eat, slowly, almost cautiously, and in that moment, something stirred deep inside Jared. There was a subtle shift within him, an unfamiliar feeling that he hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't just admiration for Clara's kindness. It was something more. A recognition that he had been missing something vital in his own life. Jared had built his empire through ambition, hard work, and unrelenting focus. His name was synonymous with success, and his wealth gave him access to anything he could possibly want. But despite all of his achievements, Jared had always struggled to connect with people on a personal level. In his world, relationships were often based on transactions, not genuine emotion. He had people who worked for him, but few he could call true friends. He had learned to rely on power and money to achieve his goals, but he had never known the kind of connection Clara shared with others until now. What he saw in her was rare, something that money could never buy, something he had always longed for but never found. It wasn't just that Clara was kind. It was that she saw people, truly saw them, and cared about their well-being in a way that few did. Jared had built his empire by taking what he wanted, but Clara had built something entirely different: a community, a network of human connections rooted in kindness and empathy. As Clara returned to the counter, her expression, warm but thoughtful, Jared couldn't help but feel a deep respect for her. He had seen her interact with customers in a way that made them feel valued, respected, and heard. She didn't just take orders and deliver food. She made people feel important. The boy, who had come into the diner a stranger, now seemed just a little less alone, all because of Clara's simple act of kindness, and that, in Jared's eyes, was something extraordinary. Jared had always thought that success was measured in the size of one's bank account, in the deals made, in the companies built. But now, as he watched Clara move about the diner with an ease and grace that came from genuine care for others, he realized that there was a different kind of success. Clara's success wasn't measured in dollars, it was measured in the way she made people feel. In a world that often prioritized power and wealth, Clara had found a way to build something more meaningful, a life of connection, a life of compassion. As he sat there, contemplating this realization, Jared found himself feeling a shift within himself, a desire to connect with others in a more meaningful way. It was a feeling he hadn't known he was missing. But now, watching Clara, he couldn't ignore it. He had spent so much of his life focused on what he could take, what he could accumulate, but in Clara, he saw something worth far more than any business deal or investment. He saw the kind of person he wanted to be. And, for the first time in a long time, Jared felt something stir within him, an urge to act, to do something more than just watch. Clara had no idea that her simple kindness had caught the attention of one of the wealthiest men in the city, but Jared had been moved by her in a way he never expected. He had seen many people over the years, but none had left the kind of impression Clara had. She had something rare, something that couldn't be bought, and he found himself compelled to know more about her, to learn from her, and perhaps to offer her an opportunity that could change both of their lives forever. The night stretched on, and as the diner slowly emptied out, the clinking of silverware and soft murmur of conversation began to fade into a gentle quiet. Clara had finished clearing the last few tables and was wiping down the counter when she noticed a figure approaching from the corner of her eye. It was Jared, the well-dressed man who had been sitting in the booth by the window. His calm, composed demeanor made him stand out even more in the dim, quiet diner, and Clara instinctively paused, unsure of what to expect. "Excuse me," Jared said, his voice as smooth and measured as ever. Clara looked up, surprised by the sudden interruption. The last thing she had expected tonight was a conversation with him. He wasn't the type to engage with the staff, and she couldn't recall him ever having more than a passing exchange with her during his regular visits. "I couldn't help but notice your kindness towards that boy," Jared continued, his gaze steady as he met her eyes. "It's rare to see someone act with such selflessness these days. You don't see that often." His words, calm and sincere, lingered in the air between them. Clara blushed, suddenly feeling shy under the weight of his compliment. It wasn't that she sought praise for the things she did, but hearing such recognition made her uncomfortable in the best way possible. "It's just part of the job," she said humbly, shrugging slightly, as though the kindness she had shown was nothing out of the ordinary. But Jared wasn't finished. He took a step closer to her, his presence more commanding now, yet still gentle. "I've been watching you for a while," he said, his voice low and deliberate. Clara's eyes widened slightly at the unexpected words. Watching her? She'd noticed him sitting in his usual spot, always quietly observing, but she had never imagined he was paying such close attention to her actions. "And I think you're someone who deserves more than what this diner can offer you," Jared continued, his tone shifting slightly. "I'm a businessman, and I want to help you. You've got the heart, the work ethic, and the drive to do something extraordinary." Clara's heart skipped a beat, and for a moment, she wasn't sure if she had heard him correctly. Was he offering her a job? Or was it something more? Her thoughts spun in a whirl of confusion, excitement, and disbelief. A part of her wanted to pinch herself. This was the kind of opportunity she'd always dreamed of, but never thought she'd have a shot at. Jared's eyes softened as he saw the hesitation in her expression, the uncertainty of someone who wasn't used to being offered more than what she was used to. "I'm not offering you just a job," he added, his smile widening ever so slightly. "I'm offering you an opportunity to change your life, but it's up to you to decide." His words hung in the air, almost as if they were a promise, an invitation to a future she hadn't even dared to imagine for herself. Clara stood there, her mind racing as she tried to process what was happening. She had always dreamed of doing something more, something beyond the confines of the diner, but never in a million years did she think that someone like Jared, someone so influential and wealthy, would see anything in her. Her hands were still, gripping the cloth she had been using to wipe the counter, but now it felt like she wasn't even sure where she was anymore. She glanced down at the cloth, then back up at Jared. His calm presence was grounding, but the words he had spoken were like a lifeline being tossed in her direction, one she had no idea how to grab onto. "I don't," she began, but her voice faltered, unsure of what to say. "This seems too good to be true." She shook her head slightly, a little overwhelmed by the weight of the moment. Jared's smile softened, and he took a small step back, giving her the space she needed. "I understand it sounds like a lot to take in, but I see something in you, Clara. Something that not many people have. You're not just a waitress. You're someone who genuinely cares about others. And that's a rare quality." His words were reassuring, and Clara felt the sincerity behind them, even as she fought the overwhelming urge to doubt. Clara had always felt that she was destined for more. She had big dreams of opening her own cafe, of creating a space where people could come together and find comfort, just as she had always tried to offer others in the small diner. But it always felt out of reach, something for people with more resources, more connections. To think that someone like Jared was offering her an opportunity like this, it almost didn't seem real. "I'm not saying it will be easy," Jared continued, his voice steady. "It will take hard work, dedication, and a willingness to step into the unknown. But I'm confident you have what it takes." He paused, as if weighing his next words carefully. "I can provide the resources, the guidance, and the support you need to make something of your talents. You don't have to do this alone." Clara's breath caught in her throat. The idea of having someone like Jared in her corner, someone who believed in her potential, was more than she could have imagined. Yet part of her still couldn't shake the nagging feeling that maybe she wasn't ready, that maybe she wasn't good enough for this kind of opportunity. She had spent so many years in the diner working hard, but feeling as though her dreams were always just beyond her reach. To hear this man, a successful businessman, tell her that she could make it was both exhilarating and terrifying. Jared seemed to sense her hesitation, and his expression softened. "Take your time to think it over," he said gently. "This is your decision, and I won't rush you. But I just wanted you to know that the opportunity is there for you if you want it." Clara stood still, her mind a whirlwind of emotions. The world outside the diner seemed so distant now, as though she were standing at a crossroads, uncertain of which path to take. But one thing was clear. This was a moment that could change her life forever. She had always dreamed of something bigger, and now it seemed that the universe was offering her a chance to reach for it. "Thank you," she said quietly, her voice full of awe. "I don't know what to say. This is so much to take in." Jared gave a nod, his smile sincere. "Take your time, Clara, and when you're ready, you'll know what to do." As he turned to leave, Clara stood there, her heart racing, her mind still spinning with the possibilities. The diner, once a familiar place of routine, now felt like the beginning of something much larger. She had been given an opportunity that could change her life, and the choice was now in her hands. Clara's life changed that night. She took Jared's offer, and what followed was nothing short of a miracle. Jared helped her get into business, using his vast network and wealth of experience to guide her every step of the way. What had once felt like an impossible dream was now becoming a reality. In the weeks that followed, Clara found herself learning things she never thought she would. Things that went beyond the basic skills of running a diner or serving customers. Jared introduced her to influential people who could help fund her vision, people who shared her passion for creating spaces that connected communities. He gave her the tools she needed to turn her dream into something tangible. Jared didn't just hand her the keys to success. He helped her unlock them herself, teaching her the principles of running a business, how to navigate the challenges, and most importantly, how to believe in herself when everything seemed uncertain. Clara worked tirelessly, soaking up everything she could from Jared and his team. She learned about marketing, budgeting, design, and even leadership. Every day she felt herself grow, both professionally and personally. The girl who once stood behind the counter of a small diner, unsure of her place in the world, was now stepping into the shoes of an entrepreneur. With Jared's help, she began to create a blueprint for her own cafe, one that would reflect her values, her care for others, and her desire to build a welcoming, inclusive environment. It wasn't just about serving food anymore. It was about creating a space where people could come together, share stories, and find comfort. But with success came challenges. There were moments when Clara questioned whether she was ready for the responsibility of it all. The late nights, the long hours, the pressure to make the right decisions. It was overwhelming at times. There were days when she felt like giving up, when the fear of failure threatened to drown her. But Jared's words echoed in her mind. You've got the heart, the work ethic, and the drive to do something extraordinary. When things got tough, Clara would remind herself of the boy in the diner, the one whose life had been touched by a simple meal and a moment of kindness. That memory became her anchor, a reminder of why she started this journey in the first place. She wasn't doing this just for herself. She was doing it to create a place where others could feel seen, valued, and cared for. As the cafe began to take shape, so did Clara's confidence. The grand opening was a modest affair, but the turnout exceeded her expectations. People came, not just for the food, but for the warmth she had promised to bring to their lives. It felt like home for so many, an inviting, cozy atmosphere where laughter and conversation flowed easily. Clara's dream had come alive, and she couldn't help but feel immense gratitude for the path that had brought her here. It wasn't just Jared's connections or his financial support that had made it possible. It was her own resilience, her willingness to take a chance on herself. Jared remained a constant in her life, a mentor and a friend. He visited the cafe often, sometimes just to check in, sometimes just to sit and enjoy a cup of coffee. And every time, he was reminded of the potential that had been there all along, even when Clara herself couldn't see it. He had been the catalyst for her transformation, but it was Clara's determination and heart that had turned her vision into reality. Years later, as Clara looked around the bustling cafe, now a staple in the community, she couldn't help but reflect on the incredible journey that had brought her here. She had gone from a young waitress with a dream to a successful businesswoman with a thriving cafe. It wasn't just the business that had grown. It was her. She had learned the importance of kindness, resilience, and believing in herself, even when the road seemed unclear. The diner that had once been her home had led her to a place where she could give back, where she could offer others the same sense of belonging she had found along the way. Clara had become a symbol of the power, of second chances, of what could happen when someone believed in you enough to help you see your own potential. And for all the challenges and triumphs along the way, Clara knew that it had all started with that one rainy evening, that one simple act of kindness, and that one man who had seen something in her when no one else did. And that's the power of kindness. It can change lives in ways you can't even imagine. Clara's story shows us that when you offer a little compassion, you never know how it might come back to you. Sometimes the smallest acts can lead to the biggest opportunities. If you enjoyed this story and want more life-changing tales like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Thank you for watching. And remember, you never know how one moment can change everything. See you in the next one.